I basically wanted to learn guitar because I was writing. And I asked my dad. I finally gave in. My dad had been wanting to teach me guitar forever, and I'd been like, "No, that's your thing, whatever." Just typical child. And then I had been like writing poetry for a while, and I was like, maybe this could be a song.
That was singer-songwriter Meredith Edgar. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city what it is. One of the best things about 2023 for me was discovering Meredith. Friend of the show, Dara Kosberg, introduced us to Meredith when Dara did short stand-up comedy bits between Meredith's music sets at the right spot, and I was hooked immediately. I sat down with Meredith at the Royal Cuckoo Organ Lounge for a special chat that comprises this episode. Look for part 2 next week, which may or may not contain a bonus music track or two. Here's Meredith.
I was born in San Francisco. My family, my parents lived in the city when I was born. They had been for a bit. I was born at San Francisco Children's.
What decade are we talking?
I was born in 83.
Okay.
I don't know when San Francisco Children's closed down, but or changed into something. I don't even know if it's a different hospital.
I think
now,
it's Benioff somewhere or other.
Okay.
Also, that's just a guess because everything's Benioff.
Not sure. I thought you were going to say it's a Benihana now. I think that's more fun.
That would be really fun.
And then family moved kind of to the south to be closer to my parents were both from the south. Moved supposedly anyway to be closer to extended family there. Lived there for a while. Lived in the Northeast for a while. Eventually moved back to the South Bay. So that's where I spent most of my childhood. Wound up being like in the South Bay, and then I moved up to the city again in my early 20s.
Since it's a little closer to home, where in the South Bay, and can you tell us about what that was like? I mean, your prior experience was a little bit like extremes of the South and the Northeast, and then now you're in California.
Yes,
got to be different, right?
Yeah, everything was very different from everything else. Like all of the places I lived definitely felt very different, had very different experiences. And then, moving back to California.
Like, how old were you when this happened?
I think we moved back when I was around 8.
Okay, so you're like second or third grade or something like that?
Third grade, yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't know, honestly, that started a pretty difficult period of my life. But,
no worries.
Just, I don't know, it was a hard age, and there was other stuff going on.
Yeah.
But it was nice to be in kind of a more, like, we had lived in Pennsylvania for a while previously to that, and it was nice to be in a more, like, diverse kind of place, that was nice.
Yeah. Did you end up like going to middle school, high school down there?
Yeah,
or?
Yeah, like in Mountain View, Sunnyvale, Cupertino, like that area. Yeah.
Okay. Did you come to the magical city that you were told you were born in, like as a kid?
Yes. Yeah.
And what were your impressions of?
I loved it here and wanted to live here. Like this was where I felt like, to me, I was very proud of having been born in San Francisco.
You're like, bitches.
I mean, my parents made it feel special, and like that was a really cool thing. They loved the city, and I know they've missed a lot of things about living here and stuff. So we would come up and visit when we lived in the South Bay. We would come up and visit and like go to the zoo and go to museums and just go walk around, go to like Chinatown, get dinner, get dim sum. And I have a lot of really great memories of coming up here as a kid.
This would have been like 90s.
Like early 90s, I guess.
Yeah. Well, okay, so my brain has now forked because I'm starting to now wonder, like, when did playing instruments and or singing enter your life? But I'm also like, when did you also? This is the fork. Is like, when did you not just decide like, oh, I like this place an hour or so up the road, but like I want to be there.
Yeah.
So you take your pick, whichever one you want to.
Well, music was just always a really integral part of my experience, just in my family. Like my parents have very eclectic, at times eccentric taste in music.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up with there was always music around, like in the car, at home. My dad played guitar and would sing to me, and I would sing harmonies with him. Like from a really young age, I was singing.
Yeah.
And I started playing violin when I was like 4, and eventually, like junior high, like joined the school choir.
Okay.
Took some classical voice lessons outside of school. Then high school was when I started learning to play guitar, and writing songs and like playing those out. Like I started playing open mics at coffee shops when I was 14.
In high school. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, early in high school,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay.
Yeah.
Down in the South Bay or in the
South
city?
Bay, yeah. There was a place called Red Rock Coffee. I think it's still there in downtown Mountain View.
Okay.
And they had a Monday night open mic, and I went there. I started going there when I was 14, and like playing covers, and eventually playing my own stuff, and that was like a really huge part of my like teenage experience, was going there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time?
I do, because it actually, for some reason, the open mic wasn't happening that night. Like the host wasn't there, and just me and like one other person showed up.
Oh.
And the people who were working there just let us just like go ahead and play.
Like
no
audience?
amplification or anything.
No amplification.
A bunch of my friends had come.
Oh God.
because I said I was gonna go. So like a bunch, or not a bunch, but you know, but a few of my friends had showed up. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. I was super, super nervous. But yeah, it was great.
Were you nervous to like hit that first note or anything?
Oh,
Was it
yeah.
And then what happened?
And then I didn't die, so it got a little better each time.
Again, I can confirm that Meredith is alive.
mostly probably alive.
Unless this is a really elaborate hallucination.
I mean, that's fun.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a common experience to like any kind of public. I'm in front of everyone and I'm doing a thing. Like no matter, and a lot of people are like, no matter how many times they do it, there's that adrenaline and it comes out as nerves and sweat and all this weird stuff. And then you start and you're like, and this is fucking easy.
Yeah.
Not easy, but like this is it. This is just the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, at this point, I get nervous in kind of specific scenarios. Like it's either if something's going on in my life and I'm just not feeling confident for the most part in general, then I might be like I don't know if I'm going to do the best job tonight, and I might be a little nervous. Most often, though, for me, performing at this point is the most comfortable thing for me, just because it's like where I feel most myself, like the part of myself that I actually like.
Yeah.
And I'm like proud of and stuff, which is like really hard for me to say out loud, but that's what it is. And but if either there's someone there that night or day, I guess, where I really care about what they think of me.
Yeah.
Either like there's someone cute who comes coming out and I'm like, oh no. Or if I'm like playing with or like opening for like a band or musicians who I really look up to or something. And I mean, I play with all like amazing people, so like everyone intimidates me a little bit, but the people who I don't know as well, maybe.
Right.
I'll get really nervous.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to finger pick, like my hands will be shaking. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
Not a good time for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That still happens, but other than that, it's like my happy place. You know?
Yeah, what you were saying about that, about like feeling like the most like yourself when you're performing, I feel like I hear that. I'm not a performer, but I hear that from certain people, and that must be really awesome to
be like, well, at least I have that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't necessarily, I mean, I know your dad he played and stuff, but you didn't necessarily have to find that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you're grateful for it.
I'm very grateful. Yeah. And I mean, actually, I know I had a really, like this last month, so just something that affected that for me though recently, like my dog passed away at the end of September.
I'm very sorry
Thank you.
about that.
Thank you. Yeah. And then that was like really like the hardest personal experience. I've had difficult personal experiences in my life, but that has wound up being like the hardest thing I've ever gone through.
Yeah.
And pretty much all through October, I had like 13 gigs in October, which for me is a lot. I play a lot, but 13 was still like a lot. And I actually found myself having a really hard time performing, and it was the first time that's ever happened to me. Like where I was going up and singing and feeling kind of detached and like not, and I was actually really kind of starting to worry, like, is this just how it is now? Am I going to get that back? And then luckily, like the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple really, really fun gigs where I felt more present and grounded. So I feel like I'm getting back to that place where it's like, just pretty much as long as I've been performing, like going and performing has been like my refuge and like my way of, no matter what else was going on, if I go play a show, even if I'm like tired or I'm grumpy or I'm depressed or whatever, I can go. And yeah, like you were saying earlier, it's like as soon as we hit the first note, then I'm like, this is good. I'm good. Like, this is exactly where I need to be. This is what I need to be doing right now, and I always feel better.
Yeah. It's like a click. And you get into the thing, and then if it's a good show, kind of euphoric, right?
Very.
I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
Cathartic, euphoric, like all that stuff.
All of those things. Yeah, for sure. So I'm glad to be finding that again. Because I had a kind of a hiatus from that for a minute, and it was a little scary, but I feel like I'm back in it now. So I'm very grateful because, it's very valuable.
But I also want to rewind to when you were 14.
Okay.
And you played that open mic. Like, how did we get from that open mic? And you said there were more after that. But, like, how did we get from that to, like, I do this? Instead of it's a thing I do.
Decades in between. Okay,
right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, And if your move to San Francisco is part of that, then...
It wasn't quite, moving to San Francisco wasn't really that. I was just ready to not be, like, in the suburbs and stuff. I just didn't really, my friends and I drove up to the city so frequently, and I loved
as, like, teenagers?
As teenagers. As, like, late teens, and, early
I gotta know where y'all were coming, though.
Mostly, we used to go to we would come up to go to shows and then go dancing, I guess. Yeah. I definitely went to the Cocodrie a handful of times. But then we would go to Pop Scene at 330 Rich.
Yes. I
because
went to
it
that.
was 18 and up.
Right.
So there may have been some underage drinking in the car beforehand.
Of
but
course.
You can edit that out if that's a problem.
Required. It's required.
Just like, yeah.
Were you going to Pop Scene in the early, the like 2000s, aughts, whatever?
Yes.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I moved here in 2000, and I guess I was lucky enough to find that through a friend, and I was like, this is part of, for me, the charm of like moving here was Pop Scene and 1984 at the Cat Club.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
went to that
so we've
too.
been at a lot of things. Yeah.
And Leisure as well. Once they started that,
Leisure,
I think that might have been later. I mean, they're still doing it, but it might have been a little later, like Britpop stuff. Yeah.
And then Pop Scene is at Rickshaw now, I believe. I don't know if it's the same people, but it is. And then 1984 is still going at the Cat Club. Yeah. I love that. Okay.
Yeah, so fun.
So, but you guys were driving up from the South Bay.
Yeah, we were coming up for shows, and sometimes, like, I guess eventually, like, past 18 and stuff, like some house parties and stuff like that. But we were coming up a fair amount, and I just really, preferred being up here
Yeah.
to being down there.
Yeah.
And so once I moved up here, I wasn't really. I'm trying to think. It took me a while before I started playing music up here.
Okay.
When I first moved up here, I still was kind of like part of a band in the South Bay.
Okay.
But it was too tricky to get down there for like rehearsals and gigs eventually.
After you
and
moved, yeah.
stuff like that. So,
Let's hear a little bit about that band, please. Was that like your first band, or?
I think it was like my first real band.
Yeah. What did you do in the band?
We were called Tin Cat.
Tin Cat.
We played very many different kinds of music. Like, we could not. There were, I think, let's see, how many of us? Like 5 of us?
Okay.
Like me, Dave. Yeah, I think there were like 5 of us in the band, and like four of us were singer-songwriters.
Ooh.
So we were all bringing songs, like, and we all had totally different styles, and
Yeah.
I mean, it mashed up in a nice way.
That's good.
Like, so I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely became a better guitarist playing with those guys, and we had a lot of fun. Like, and they're all just like wonderful people, wonderful musicians, but once I moved up here, it was just harder to get down there. And
did you think about trying to form up something up here with people, or?
I did eventually. Honestly, I was the first couple years I was up here, I was in a really bad relationship, and that kept me pretty isolated. And so I didn't do really any music stuff when that was happening.
Okay.
And then once I got out of that, then I started playing again and writing again, and that was kind of when things started. Yeah, that was when things kind of started picking up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can we date? Like, when did you move here?
It would have been
Like 05 or something?
like I think 04?
04, okay.
03 or 04 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like
I think.
21-ish?
I was like 21, yeah.
Okay. Where did
Yeah.
you live? Did you work up here? I have so many questions.
I did. For a while, I worked at Macy's in Union Square for a bit in the cosmetic department.
Yes. Amazing.
That was. I met some amazing people working there, like some wonderful. Had some really wonderful coworkers, like a couple of whom I'm still friends with. But also working there was also terrible.
I understand how things can be both. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
It's always like the job is terrible, or like whoever you work for, and I have like best friends for life.
Yeah.
It's like commiseration.
It's shared trauma, right?
Yeah,
it
totally.
Really bonds you.
Totally.
Or just shared loathing of, where you have to spend like 8 or so hours a day.
Yes, because it's if you were alone, you're like, am I totally insane?
Yeah.
Am I the one? Am I the problem? But you
Yeah.
have other people, and you're like, oh yeah, well, at least we're all together.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah. I had some really wonderful coworkers there, so I'm glad we had each other.
I'm sorry, you said Macy's, and now I'm thinking about the kitties and puppies.
Yes. Oh, so right, especially
Sorry.
because 'tis the season.
It literally.
So actually, the counter where I worked, there was a storage closet like right behind our counter, or it was usually a storage closet. But when it was time for the SPCA to have the like kittens and puppies in the windows for the holiday, rescue or adoptions and stuff, that storage closet turned into the kitty closet, the kitten closet. It was a closet full of kittens.
Oh my God.
And so like on my breaks when I should have been going and probably like eating or, sitting down or something, I would like go in there and get to like just hold kittens.
Oh, man.
And it was so hard not to. I remember going home to my roommates and being like, do we need a kitten?
Yeah.
And they were like, I think someone was, oh sweet, Mose Allison. That makes me happy.
Awesome. I always imagine myself in scenarios like that, and this is why I don't let myself go to the SPCA I imagine Pee Wee Herman, that I would do that. I'd be the one like setting them all free and be like, come with me or don't, but get out of here.
Yeah. Except in the SPCA's, they are probably, whatever. They're probably well, I don't know. I figure they're probably safer there for the most part than they are in the streets.
100%.
In the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah, it's totally true.
But yeah, that was a highlight.
You had a front row to that.
I did.
And I guess access to that closet.
A kitten fell asleep on me during one of my breaks, and I was just looking at my manager like, I can't come back to work. What am I supposed to do?
You can't go back to work?
It's asleep on my body.
That's absurd. Okay, so it is now we'll move beyond your arrival here to when you picked up music again. You said there was a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And then you picked up music again, so.
Yeah, so I think probably like 2000, I'm guessing 2000, like 6, 7, something like that.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay.
Like 2006, like started writing again and playing out a little bit. So like, yeah, I think between like 2006 and 2000, like 8 or so, I was like kind of getting back into like playing out and stuff, just like solo shows.
And playing your own music, or?
Mostly my own and some covers mixed in.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did the writing of original music start? Does that go back to South Bay?
Around 14, around my when I was 14.
Okay,
yeah.
around the open mic era, I'm gonna call it. Yeah.
I started. I basically wanted to learn guitar because I was writing. And I asked my dad. I finally gave in. My dad had been wanting to teach me guitar forever, and I'd been like, no, that's your thing, whatever, just typical child. And then I had been like writing poetry for a while, and I was like, maybe this could be a song. And so I was right around when I turned 14, and I had this little, I remember it was like little purple, like tiny, like, kind of pocket-sized notebook or whatever that I was writing all of my like very emotional, very long-winded,
oh yes,
if you can imagine, poetry in there. And then I was like, I think I want to start making these into songs.
Yes.
And so, but I didn't want to have to rely on anyone else to back me up. Like, I wanted to just wanted to be self-sufficient, wanted to be able to like just play my own stuff, whether or not, and not have to like find someone to help,
right, or
make it possible. So I finally went to my dad and was like, okay, I think I want a guitar. Would you please teach me how to play guitar? And he taught me like a handful of chords, and then I kind of locked myself in my room for the summer, and then came out and was like, okay, I can do some stuff.
Yes.
I wasn't amazing by any means, but I could like, I could play like 5 chords and write some stuff. So.
Where do you think that sense of independence came from?
Well.
Or, yes, please take a drink. Take another drink. Because I think at a young age, yes, it could come just like, teenager oppositional stuff.
Yeah,
or there might be.
I agree, but in my case, I do think they're kind of I love my family. They're complicated, but they're not a lot of boundaries there.
Oh.
And I think I was at an age where I was just like, I needed to distinguish, like, I am me, and I didn't want everything that I did to be, I wasn't fully, I see this now, I wasn't fully conscious of it at the time or anything, but I think I was like trying to just be like, I want this to be my thing. Like as an identity. Yes. Forming an identity. Much. Yeah, I'm not just part of this like cyborg system. I'm like, I am me, and that's not, and all of me is not the same as you, and whatever. Right. Yeah. You're not totally these weird people who gave birth to you and fed you for a while. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I just wanted to be able to go and do stuff on my own. But also I'm sure had some like kind of just like don't rely on people, don't like get too make sure you can like do stuff for yourself, kind of thing. Yeah. Do you have siblings? I do.
Okay.
It's also a little complicated, but
Okay.
I do. I have a
That you grew
I
up
have
with? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes and no.
Okay.
I have a brother who's 6 years younger than me, who I did grow up with. He was born when my family lived in Georgia.
Okay.
And he's a phenomenal cartoonist and just visual artist,
Yes.
really wonderful. And then I do have a sister who I did not grow up with, but she's a year older than me.
Okay.
I didn't. That's a whole other podcast. But I didn't. Found out about her and met her when I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she actually, and we've been very close since then, very, very close. But she cuts my hair now, except for the bang trim that I just gave myself 2 days ago. Sorry, Sasha, sorry. Because I couldn't stand it anymore. And
listeners will be seeing pictures. So good visual.
Please don't
descriptor.
judge my sister's hair cutting abilities by my current bang situation. I just couldn't see through the hair. But she did my hair and makeup for a music video that I filmed at the Makeout Room earlier this year.
Oh, nice.
And
so she's
very
around
talented,
also,
very wonderful. Yeah.
In the Bay Area.
Yeah,
or
she's in the North Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm always interested, and I did read or hear something recently. It's it's not that I don't believe in astrology or do, but talking about when you have siblings, birth order and things like that being a big factor in your life. Maybe sometimes in addition to things like geography or the age of your parents or their backgrounds, I think. And I'm the youngest of three.
Okay.
So I'm very much the prototype youngest. So when I was asking about independence, where it's coming from for me is I had to learn independence. I had to learn what it means to be alone but not be lonely. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm always
Sure.
fascinated. My wife she has half siblings that she didn't grow up in a house with. So effectively she's an only child, and she's always been way better at that.
Sure.
Whereas it's been something that I've had to learn. And I'm pretty okay and good with it now. But anyway, I'm always fascinated to hear different perspectives.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing is really fascinating, and definitely and meeting my sister and then having the relationship that we do has been very interesting.
As adults.
Experience in nature versus nurture, and because we have a lot of similarities, but then we also grew up in some ways similarly and in so many ways very differently. But we definitely have a lot in common, and it feels like we speak the same language a lot of the time, and no one else does. It's one of those really
almost
amazing things.
Twins.
Yeah, we're barely a year apart.
Yeah.
We're kind of like Irish twins.
Twins, yeah.
But yeah, it is funny because I grew up, effectively, in my family home was the older sibling by quite a bit, by 6 years. But then I met my sister, and it was and suddenly I felt very much not the oldest sibling, just compared, because I met her and I was immediately in awe of her and looked up to her and was just oh my God, she's so beautiful and so charming, and everyone loves her, and all this stuff. And if she hears this, she'll probably be laughing. She's heard it before. We've talked through this stuff a lot. But yeah, very much immediately felt
Yeah.
I went
super impactful to meet her. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And continues to be.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah. I love her to pieces. We're very close and very, very, very grateful that even though it was a real weird way to find out that you have a full blood sibling. But I'm so grateful that it eventually did happen. Wish it had happened sooner.
Right.
Wish my parents had been the ones to tell me. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
But
here we are.
But here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
That was Meredith Edgar. Part 2 with Meredith drops next Tuesday wherever you listen to podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 6th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show, and drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Keep rejecting those silly doom loop narratives about our city. Stay wacky, weird, healthy, and creative. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.